being recorded.
Thing that I just discovered that I wanted to share with you guys. So I'd actually gone through this particular video that just popped on your screen in an earlier video. Okay. And once these videos actually drop, I have a backlog of videos that I've already made and actually have not been uploaded yet, right? So once that is done, this, that video that I reviewed, this particular video by this doctor, Dr. G, this exact video, right? I would link that here because she said something that I actually missed. That she said something that I actually missed the last time I reviewed it, right? But which just proves my point. And I want you to listen to it.
We will talk about lionization, also called X inactivation or bar body formation. It is a very natural process that happens only in females who has two X chromosomes.
It's not natural.
And not in males because the males has only one X chromosome, because it is the process of X inactivation. So lionization happens only when you have two X chromosomes, so one of that X chromosome gets inactivated. It cannot happen in men, it can only happen in women. Okay.
So first of all, the reason they claim that the X inactivation happened. Did you guys actually get what she was describing as the inactivation, which means that you have one X, you're using your genes to run your biological processes, right? They're happening every single day. You're using your genes every single day, right? So you have 46 chromosomes, in which your entire human genome is packaged in, right? So, and in that human genome, you of the 46 chromosomes, right? You have two of those genome in two sex chromosomes, and one of the sex chromosomes is made to be not available for biological processes. It is made to not be available to be used in biological processes. It is made to be in a state of inactivity where it cannot be accessed. It is made to be in a state where it cannot be accessed to be used for biological processes, right? So that's what that inactivation means. So when they tell us that we have two X's, yes, but we actually live as though we only have one X, right? That's the first thing in that.
Three names.
And the natural, what she's saying, that it's a natural process, right? No, it's not actually a natural process. That would be like saying, it's a natural process that you grow two legs, but then they're gonna cut off one. Biology just does not work like that. It simply does not work like that. That whatever it is that your body is producing, that your body has, you have to off it somehow, right? Without any reasonable explanation. And that reasonable explanation being that it is good for your survival to do so, right? There is no survival mechanism. There is no survival reason. Every single thing that happens in your body is because it's geared towards the singular goal, the lone purpose of you surviving. So what would be the survival purpose of you being hobbled like this, of your sex chromosome being hobbled like this? And it's not actually your sex chromosome. The X is the human essence. It is the actual life in you. It is the human essence. And your biology has determined that you need two of them. That for you to be a proper human, you need two of them, right? So they have hobbled you to be less than what you are actually supposed to be. So what would be the survival purpose of having done this, right? Because that is what would make it a natural process. Outside of that, it's not a natural process. It is a pathology, which means that something that sickens you, something that harms you. If there is no survival purpose, and by survival purpose, I mean your particular individual, your particular organism. It's not a species thing, your particular organism. If it's not for the purpose of your particular organism survival, then it is a pathology. And the reason why it is a pathology you're about to see is exactly why this video is actually being made, okay? It's exactly why this video is actually being made, because I want to show you why it is not a natural process, but but it is actually a pathology.
Lionization or X inactivation or bar body formation. So the females has two X chromosome. One is maternal origin and the other is paternal origin. Only one of those X chromosomes is randomly turned off in every cell in early development. Okay, this turned off chromosome is called bar body or methylated heterochromatin. Okay, this process is very random. In some cells, the paternal X chromosome is inactivated, and in some cells, the maternal X chromosome is inactivated. So it is not always the maternal X chromosome that is inactivated or paternal X chromosome that is inactivated. It is very random process. Why lionization is important? We know that some of the diseases are X-linked recessive diseases. That means these diseases are very common in men. They are transmitted genetically through X chromosome, so they appear very easily in men because man has only one X chromosome, and that if that X chromosome has the faulty genes for some diseases, the disease will appear in those persons. So usually the X-linked recessive disorders are most likely seen in men, while what happens is sometimes the X-linked recessive disease also gets activated in females. And what is the reason? Because as females, the lionization process is very random. So some cells with the normal gene get active, and in some cells, the faulty genes, the X chromosome that contains faulty genes get activated. So
That's why. This is why your body decides you needed two copies. Because again, let me reiterate this. You are a complex organism. Even a rat is complex, right? Even a rat is doing a lot of biological processes that it needs to work on a high level so that it makes sure that everything that it's doing is right the first time. Yeah? So that, and then it has processes to make sure that even if they're like mistakes, like, and if you've ever heard of, if you've ever like studied genetics on any level, like any level, you would have heard of something called mutations, right? Mutations missense. That's, one of those things, right? Which is that something about the genes went wrong, right? Something about the genes went wrong so that you can't really like, so that it would translate into how your body operates, right? That is something, right? That is a mutation, right? So if you've ever heard of such a thing, you hear that the number at which they occur is so small that you would think, this is nothing. This is nothing, right? But your body has a way of fixing those very same mutations. But why would it need to fix something that occurs so small, at such a small in such a small chance of occurring, and so occurs so little that it feels like, oh, it's nothing? Because your body understands how your biology understands, not just our biology but every biology understands that these things are, that 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 if it leaves these mutations out, they accumulate, right? Even one can be very devastating. Even one can be devastating, and if it doesn't fix them, they accumulate, right? So it has a way to fix these things because it knows it has to be perfect every time, right? So it has processes to make sure that these things, the even the small, tiniest little chances of mutations are corrected. It has quality control systems for those things to be fixed so that they don't transfer, right? Because if you're making a trillion cells and you have one a trillion cells every 90 days, right? And you have one in a trillion chance of one mutation, but then you don't fix them. That means by 90 days, you would have had two mutations. You understand that? You will have had three mutations. Excuse me, by 180 days, by 270 days, you would have had three mutations. And you see how they're all piling up. This is why you have to fix them. And when you, and again, because any of the genes, there's some genes are more important than the others. Yes, sure, because some genes affect a whole lot of things. So let's say that one of those genes, of those ones that affect a lot of things, get a mutation, that means that you have affected a lot of organ systems, right? Which means that the individual that you're going to be producing, cannot even, it's just, it will be so difficult for them to even survive. Survival would be difficult, right? That is why genes work at a high level to make sure they have zero mutations, right? So when you have two, so one of the quality control systems that they have is like what? Giving you two copies of everything. Yeah, that's one of them. That's one of them. That is one of the quality control systems. Yeah. The other one is that the two X's, your chromosomes, they're supposed to help each other fix each other. They're supposed to help each other fix whatever is going on. That is another thing, right? So let's look at so when they're saying that they're going to inactivate one of your X's, and then that later causes you a problem. Do you see how that could not be so? Do you see how that could not be so? Something that later causes you a problem, which is that you don't have access to the other genes that you may need, right? Then that becomes, and then it later causes you to now, reduces your ability to survive. Then that is to prove that that is not even natural, because that is not a control system that would have such a process. So that the process of the control system that is trying to control something will later cause something else to happen. It simply doesn't work. Control systems don't work like this. And the control system, they work exactly like like you would do when you work tasks, which is like when you like, for instance, if you let's say you're writing a book. You're going to go over them, and you're going to make sure that you dot this T, and you erase this, this is that should have been a was, etc. Right? That is a control system. That is a control system, right? And the control system is not supposed to make the work worse. It's not supposed to create a problem. Control systems are not supposed to create a problem. So the fact that it later creates a problem means that it is not, in fact, a control system. It is not, in fact, a control system. It is a pathology. They are giving us this information as though it is a control system to make sure that the organism that is being created is created well. That is how they are selling this to us. But this is a woman too. I've reviewed 3 videos of this X. Oh no, excuse me, 4 videos of X inactivation now, right? Right, and 3 of them, including this one, have been females, and yet these females, they are selling it as though they are being fixed, as though as though it is wrong to have 2 X's. Listen to that. As though it is wrong to have 2 X's. As though it is wrong to be female. This is madness. It is not a control system. They are not fixing anything in you. They are hobbling us. That is how they hobbled us. I just wanted to jump on here and say that. Let me see if there's anything else that I missed here.
If the X chromosome that contains faulty genes are activated, that X chromosome is activated, it does not undergo lionization. So diseases can show up in females as well. Okay. So sometimes they depend on how many cells with the X chromosome containing faulty genes are activated, are turned on. So disease appear on the basis of those turned on faulty genes. Okay. So they usually have mild.
Pause a minute. I actually did miss this. Muscular dystrophies. Any women, I've heard many times of women suffering from muscular dystrophy. See, it makes sense when the men have it, right? Because they are not supposed to. They don't have 2 X's. They're only supposed. They only could have 1 copy of this. But women are not supposed to be having these issues. Women are supposed to have perfect biology. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Women are supposed to have perfect biology. That is what I am telling you right now. Women are supposed to have perfect biology. The 80% of women who are suffering from autoimmune disease, that's not supposed to happen. That is not supposed to happen, because you have to understand that in order for your body to be able to do all the things that it does, again, the only way it could succeed at them, right? The only way it could succeed, the only way you could even be alive is that if it is good at what it does, so much so that it does this thing on a perfect basis, which means that you getting muscular dystrophy, that's just not going to happen. Which means that the control system, the things, the things that that make you prevent things like this was broken. That is why they are showing up. It was broken. It was broken for the XY male to even be produced. The control, the quality control production system for the XX has to be broken, because the XX is the only organism that should be made, which means that the quality control system will have a system by which it checks for XX only. XX only is the only thing that would pass. It will check, that will pass the quality control test. So it would check for X, for one X, it would check for one X, it would check for X is more than 2, right? But both of those situations would fail. Would either get the organism like repurposed, like it would discard the organism and start over, or it would fix, or it would literally fix it, so that those things, so that the problem no longer occurs, right? So that means that only two X's would pass the control system, which means that if you want to now produce one X, you have to break that control system that only checks for 2XX. And here's the other thing. There's something else that is called genomic imprinting for paternal, genomic imprinting for paternal X, right? Which is another system by which checks to make sure that we don't have an XX individual, like an XX individual that can do parthenogenesis, right? And that system does this where it checks to make sure that there is a paternal sourced X chromosome, that there is a paternal sourced X chromosome. Now you have to understand that these X chromosomes, they all came from females. These X chromosomes all came from females, which means that when it got into the males, they tagged it. Ooh, they had to have tagged the X that they received to make them human. They tagged it with a paternal imprint, so that when it goes now into the female, right? If that imprint is missing, then you can say this organism cannot move forward. So now let me backtrack a little bit. The quality control system in a normal, actually true human would be, because it only produces XX, the normal control system would be only an XX female would pass the quality control, right? That means a 1X female will not pass, an XXX female will not pass, an XYF female, in which there is a Y chromosome. There are all the other genes on the Y chromosome, but something did not. But the messaging pathway to create an actual the messaging pathway to create a male did not occur. That's why it stayed female. Okay, that's why it stayed female. And let me repeat that: an XY female, right, is a female that has a Y chromosome instead of a 2X chromosome. It has XY chromosome, but instead of 2X chromosomes, because it stayed female, because the pathway by which a male is created is to disrupt the normal process by which a female is created, which is just that there is 2X's. Once there are 2X's, it just creates, right? It just creates. It doesn't have to do anything special. So if a Y chromosome is the genes on that, they disrupt that pathway to interject their own their own instructions, because all these things are going by instructions, which is signaling pathways. You signal this to signal this to signal this to signal this, and before you know it, you have a whole individual, you have a whole organism, right? So the Y typically disrupts the signaling pathway to create a female, right? So that's why by its own, so it disrupts the normal signaling pathway to create a female by creating its own signaling pathway. So when the Y signaling pathway is missing, you just create a female. A female just naturally materializes, right? So in those cases, right? Excuse me. In those cases, uh, you would not, if not for their hobbling, they're having to break this control system that checks for only an XX female, right? They would not be able to create a male at all. They would not be able to hijack the system, because every time the system detects a single X, it would kill the organism. You understand? Because it is a control system. It will likely kill the organism, or it would fix it. Yeah, it would fix it so that it doesn't proceed with a faulty, genome, right? So that is what they have to happen. So let me backtrack again. So the path, the control system, the quality control system is that it checks for two X's, right? That is the only thing that passes. It also checks for one X, but that one would fail, and that one would get rerouted to be destroyed or fixed, right? And then a third check would be for X is more than 2. For X is more than 2. Now, it would only check for the X. It would only check for the X because it's not supposed to have anything else, right? It would only check for the X because it's not supposed to have anything else, right? So it would check for X's more than 2, and those would fail. If there are any X's more than 2, those would fail, and they would either be destroyed or they would be sent off to be fixed, right? So, and you have to understand that in a parthenogenic female, right, which is what this control system will be designed for, right? You would not need to check for a paternal. You would not need to check for a paternal source, because every gene will have come from that same female, right? So now this is what they had to break that system. They had to break that system that checks for these three things. So now, having broken that system, the checking for the 2XX is now different. The checking for the X, for the 1X now gets to pass through, and the checking for the 3X now gets to pass through, and the checking for the XY female also gets to pass through, but so does the checking for the XY male. This is how you can make a male. And in order for them to be able to make themselves, they had to break the system that makes us our best. They had to break the system that makes us our best. And that is why we're having XO females with all these problems. We're having Y females with all these problems. That's why we're having XXX females with problems. And that's why we're having muscular dystrophy, because again, part of that check, right, is that what an XO gets through, right? A X. Oh, by the way, this part of it that I'm talking about, the system to check for the XX is not even included as part of this. Again, this is why it is so complicated. If the system to check for the XX, right, that comes before
partial or sometimes
this
no
here
symptoms.
happens, before this inactivation that she's talking about even happens. Because I'm guessing because it still has to check for XX. You understand that in the system that they set up, because they need us females to continue to make them. So they need to make us and make them, right? Because, and I'm guessing because that was because they weren't banking on the fact that you need two X's to be able to reproduce, right? So now without us, right, with our one X, without two X's, without two X individuals, they cannot make any more organisms. They cannot make any more people, right? So that's why they even allowed us to even continue to exist, right? That's why they even allowed us to continue to exist, right? So, but the check that they put is from to prevent us from making the part that would exclude them, the part where our system works the way it does, and that excludes them, because that is its normal pathway. Its normal pathway is to exclude them, right? So now they install a system whereby, instead of checking for just like, okay, there are two x's and there aren't one x and there aren't three x's, right? It now has to check for, to make sure that there's a paternal X in there, right? So that means that it has to do that at another step. It has to do that at another step, because if it goes where, if it has this XX thing, for it to be able to make a female at all, right? For it to be able to make a female, right? It has to pass this first check. It has to pass this first check where the two X's happen. It still has to pass the first step quality control, which is the 2XX, right? It still has to pass that, but they still have to prevent it, right? So that is why they have to separate that, in order to make sure that they can make a female, but not a female without a male, but not a female that wasn't from a male, that wasn't made from a male, right? So there, there you go. There you go. Oof, goodness, I think that was very complicated, and I'm not very. I wish I was a better. I wish I was a better orator than this, because I would confidently be able to explain this to you. But man, I love this. I love this part of the complexity of it. But it is also difficult for me to kind of explain it to you, and I really hope that I'm doing it justice. I really hope that I'm doing this justice, but you need to understand that this system, the mere fact that it causes problems later on, right? The mere fact that it causes problems is the proof that it is a pathology. It is not fixing anything, which means it's not normal. If it's causing problems, that means it is not normal. The appearance of problems is your clue that there was a pathology on it, that it was pathologized by something, right? And the something that pathologized it is this right here. This is what pathologized it. Okay, this thing that is X in activation is what pathologized. And because it is an X, because it is your human essence, it's going to affect a lot of things. It's going to affect a lot of things, and I think that it is the foundation of why there is a lot of diseases happening, why a lot of deformities happen, and why we even get easily sick. I do believe that, actually. I only recently realized that, you know instead of, like, from years ago, that when I realized all of these things, what I walked in on. I only recently realized that our immune system is likely compromised as well. I only recently realized that our immune system is likely also compromised, and that is why we are even able to get sick with a lot of these diseases. Because I find it quite odd that, as complex as we are, that HIV viruses that we haven't that HIV viruses they're able to get a hold of us, like flu viruses, right? The most tame of the viruses. You understand how crazy that is? You understand how crazy that is, right? When bacteria actually have an immune system, right? That do basically what we do. Bacterial immune system works basically how we work, how our immune system works, right?
Totally depends on
which means that so bacteria have an immune system whereby they work kind of like how we work. It's the same foundational basis of what is happening with us that happens in them, which tells me that the immune system is an age old biological process, right? So how come is it that we are still dealing with, we are still susceptible to all these organisms, right? So when they say that evolution, when they say that evolution helps us, it didn't help us. It actually hobbled us. The evolution that they're talking that it helped us is their evolution. It helped them. It helped them immensely, but it didn't help us. It hobbled us, actually. Their presence, right? Their presence, the evolution that they're talking about is theirs. And that evolution is what they used to hobble us. It's what they used to disable us from being free of that. It didn't help us. The evolution, every time they tell you in your biology class, in all these sciences that oh, you need evolution is good for you. The evolution that they're talking about was their evolution, not ours. Because the reason is that ours was already perfect. Ours was already perfect. And it depended on being able to fix the problems, right? Which means that they had to spend a lot of time evolving for them to even be able to get at us. That's what they're talking about. Every time you hear evolution is good, we evolve. The sexual evolution thing was better. It was not. It was not. Anyway, that is it.